Upstairs, my life was in shambles. My roommate had been caught with drug stuff, and even though I hadn't touched it, the cops found it on our landlord's property, and I got kicked out. It was a major bummer because I was already struggling with money, and now I was homeless with only 3 days to find a new place to live. I was in the middle of nowhere, and my options were limited. There was just one other small apartment building, but their prices were twice as high as what I could afford. My hope was fading fast, but then I spotted a listing online for a place just 5 miles away. It looked like an old barn that someone had made into a house, split into 2 floors. The pictures only showed the downstairs, and it was kind of rough around the edges, but I was desperate. I called the owner, a friendly old man with a southern accent, and rented the downstairs. The next morning, I packed my meager belongings and drove out to the farm. The old man, Eli, was waiting for me by his main house. He looked just like I imagined: worn-out jeans, dusty boots, a big tummy, and a long grey beard. I parked my car and walked over to greet him. "Howdy," he said, nodding at me. "Hello," I replied, trying to sound cheerful. "I'm Melissa. Your place is really nice." He shook my hand. "Eli, and thanks." He picked up my bags. "Oh, you don't have to do that, it's not that much," I said, but he just smiled and carried them. "Your place is around back," he said, walking towards the barn. "Sorry, I haven't built a driveway yet, but you can park in the grass if you want." My old car wouldn't make it through the tall grass, so I walked. The house was just a short distance away, and there was a worn path through the grass. It had 2 floors, and both floors had windows in the same spots. The upstairs window didn't have glass in it. The house looked smaller than in the pictures, but I was hoping to relax on the farm at night. Eli unlocked the door and flipped on the lights. It smelled like hay, manure, and wood, a smell I'd have to get used to. On one side of the room, there was a dusty old TV with a worn-out chair facing it. The bathroom and bedroom were next to it. The kitchen was on the back wall, and there was a ladder leading to a hole in the ceiling, going up to the 2nd floor. "What's that?" I asked, pointing to the ladder. "That's how you get upstairs right now," Eli explained. "I'm gonna build a door and steps on the back of the house later, but haven't gotten around to it." He set my bags in the middle of the room. "Don't worry, no one else is living here yet. I'm not renting the top floor until I make another entrance." "Okay," I said, looking around. "Did you make this into a house recently?" "No," he said. "My grandpa turned this barn into a house for his distant cousins, twins, a long time ago. I didn't know them very well. I only inherited this place a couple of years ago." "I'm sorry for your loss," I said, but he shook his head. "Well, I wasn't close to my parents after I turned 18, he sighed. "I wasn't much into farming, but I like it more now that I'm older. My parents worked really hard to keep the farm as big and successful as my grandpa did, but they struggled. Since I had my own small farm, I thought I could make this one work when I inherited it, but I'm struggling too. That's why I'm renting it out," he explained with a shrug. "I bet running a farm is really hard, especially by yourself," I said. "Well," he paused, looking around the room, "it wouldn't be so bad if something wasn't messing with my crops and killing my animals." "Oh," I said. He looked at me. "Now, don't worry, I'm sure it's just some coyotes. The animals are all on the other side of the house anyway." I was trying to be brave, but I was starting to think maybe this wasn't such a great idea. I knew I had to stay for now, but I'd keep looking for other places. At least this rental wasn't a contract, just month to month. "I'm sure it's fine," I said, trying to sound confident. "I don't have much livestock left, just a few cows and chickens, so I don't think it'll be a problem," he said, handing me the key. "If you need anything just call me or come knock. Don't be shy." "Thank you," I said, as he walked back to his house. I explored the house for a while before unpacking and making myself comfortable. That night, I sat in the chair and searched online for other places to live. I searched for hours, looking further and further away, but nothing I could afford. I even thought about putting up a message online looking for roommates, but after getting kicked out because of the last one, I'd rather live with the coyotes. It was getting late, and I could smell the dew on the grass outside. When I went to bed, the floor creaked really loudly every time I took a step. It sounded like the whole house was groaning. I didn't remember it being so noisy before, but maybe it was louder because it was quiet at night. I tried to sleep, but I couldn't. The next morning, I saw Eli carrying a shovel towards the barn. I waved at him, but he didn't see me. He disappeared inside, and I went to work. When I came back that evening, Eli was sitting on the porch, smoking. He nodded to me when I got out of my car. "Hello," I called out. I could tell he was tired just like I was. "Long day, same old," he said with a smile. "Does misery love company?" I laughed. "It sure does," I answered. I walked over to him, and we talked for a while about our lives, growing up, and how we ended up where we were. He was nice and honest, listened to me carefully, and shared his own stories. It was exactly what we both needed. So, am I the first person to stay here? I asked. Actually, there was one other lady before you. She was about your age. But she didn't stay very long. We had a bit of a disagreement. What happened? I asked. She rented the downstairs, but she let her sister stay upstairs without talking to me first. He sighed. I should have just ignored it because I wasn't ready to rent out the top floor yet, but it just seemed rude. I talked to her nicely about it, but she kept saying it wasn't true. But I saw them both standing at the windows, one downstairs and one upstairs, looking at me. I saw them do that several times over a few weeks. He sighed again. They were strange ones. That's definitely not cool, I replied. I don't blame you. He smiled. Well, it's getting late. Time for bed. He stood up and headed inside. Good night, he said, closing the door behind him. Good night, I answered, walking back to the house. As I stepped inside, I heard the loud creaking again. Every step I took made a squeaking sound. I noticed that every squeak on the first floor made an echoing sound upstairs. I swayed back and forth to make sure I was hearing right. Each time I moved, the thud echoed upstairs. Was someone up there? I wondered. Hello, I called out, but there was no answer. Was the sister still living upstairs? I tiptoed towards the ladder, each squeak downstairs matching my steps. It must just be the way the house is built, I told myself. I stared at the hole in the ceiling, thinking about taking a peek. But maybe it was best to wait until morning. I sat in the chair that night, watching the ladder. I might have dozed off a couple of times, but I didn't sleep well. I didn't see Eli in the morning, and I wished I had so I could ask him about the second floor. I went to work, but I left early so I could check the upstairs before it got dark. When I got back, Eli was near the barn with a shovel, covered in dirt and sweat. I waved at him, but he didn't see me. When I reached the house, I walked around to see if the creaking echoed upstairs, but it was quiet. I turned on my phone's flashlight and climbed the ladder. I found the light switch and flipped it on. The second floor looked exactly like the first floor. Everything was the same, except for the window in the front that had a pane missing, next to the ladder. I went to the kitchen to see if there was anything I could use to cover the window, but the drawers were empty. Then I noticed the bedroom door was closed. I tried to open it, but it was locked. Hello, I called out as I knocked, but there was no answer. If anyone had been living upstairs, they hadn't left anything behind. The only way out that I wouldn't notice was the broken window, but they wouldn't be able to get back in without a ladder. Maybe they were sneaking in and out while I was at work, but Eli would have seen someone coming in and out. I went downstairs to look for something to cover the window. It was late, but I decided to call Eli to ask about the upstairs bedroom. I found a spare sheet under the bed, just as Eli picked up the phone. Hello, he answered. Hey Eli, it's Melissa. Sorry to bother you so late, but I was checking the upstairs and the bedroom door is locked. Is there a reason? He grumbled, showing he was annoyed that I had woken him up. There's no lock on the bedroom doors. I froze for a moment, then put my foot down. The creak echoed upstairs, just like the night before. I took another step, and it echoed again. Good night, Eli said and hung up. I froze. The only sound I could hear was crickets outside. I dropped the sheet and ran to the kitchen. The thuds and creaks I made were exactly mirrored upstairs. I grabbed a knife from the drawer and ran to the ladder. Once again, every thump I made echoed right above. I climbed up and put my hand on the trapdoor. I paused, taking a deep breath, then burst through. There was no one. I swayed back and forth, listening for the creaking sounds below and above. Then I stomped a couple of times, and it echoed really loudly, but it still sounded like it was coming from above. I told myself that it must just be the way the house was built, the sound bouncing around or the frame moving. But then I saw that the bedroom door was open. I took a couple of steps towards the bedroom and peeked inside. It was empty. Strange, but I was relieved. I guess the door had opened when I was stomping. My phone rang. It was Eli. Hello, I answered. What are you doing? He asked. I was just looking around upstairs. There were some noises and the bedroom door opened, Sarai, but he cut me off. No, he said. Why are you on the roof? What? I replied. What are you doing on the roof? Why were you stomping on it? I froze again. My mind raced. I stared at the open window above the ladder. Are you in your room? I asked. I couldn't see the house through the window because of the angle, so he shouldn't be able to see me. Of course, I was in bed, he answered. I raised my hand and waved. Yes, hello, Eli said. I see you. I dropped my knife and jumped down the hatch. I grabbed my keys, got in my car, and never went back. I left the few things I had behind. Eli called me the next day and insisted I explain why I was on the roof. I tried to tell him it wasn't me, that someone or something else was living there, but he wouldn't listen. Before we hung up, he asked me why there were blood and feathers in the upstairs bedroom. I don't know, I answered, but I don't think you have coyotes, I don't think the woman who lived here before me had a sister, and I don't think your cousin had a twin.